Welcome to WiseTake.com. This is CK013. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And yes, I'm bringing you another NBA DFS podcast. It's Tuesday, January 31st, 2017, the last day of January. And we have a nice little 6-game slate following up last night's 5-game slate. And last night was fun. I think it could have been a little more fun had they included that 6 o'clock Kings and Sixers game. Boogie went nuts, so it would have been fun to factor him into the mix. Unfortunately, they decided not to do it, probably because, one, it was a makeup game, and also, number two, they probably figured that 6 and 7:30 was too far of a gap, and they were probably trying to do us a favor and allow us time to get information with the rest before lock with the rest of the games. However, it ended up not really mattering because there was no significant information that came through between 6 and 7:30 that really would have made that much of a difference. In my opinion, the biggest thing I was waiting for was to see if JaMychal Green was going to play, and we didn't find that out until after lock anyway, so it ended up not mattering. But we're going to talk about today, go position by position, as we've been doing a lot lately. I've liked it. Hopefully you guys have liked it too. Let me know if not. Let me know if you do. Anyway, starting off with point guard, I think point guard is pretty loaded today at pretty much every tier. Obviously, you're going to pay for your upside, but even in the mid tier and low tier, you got some guys, some value guys. We got some interesting plays to talk about. First off, I'm going to say Harden's in play, so we got to talk about Harden. If you're going to play Harden, play him at the shooting guard position on DraftKings. Obviously, on FanDuel, you have no choice. But if you're going to play Harden on DraftKings, play him at the shooting guard position because point guard is too loaded. You're not going to want to waste. Not to mention shooting guard's kind of gross, so you're not going to want to waste a point guard slot if you don't have to. So anyway, let's start off with Russell Westbrook at the point guard position. He's 12-2. We got to talk about him. His matchup on paper isn't so great. So what the alarms that go off in my head is Westbrook is probably going to be lower owned than usual. So do I think he's a lock? No, he's in a tough matchup against San Antonio in a pace down spot on the road after just getting blown out by Cleveland, who hasn't been playing well lately. So I'm not in love with Westbrook, but you got to consider him just because of the fact that he's going to be lower owned than he typically is. Anytime you get a situation like, for instance, James Harden the other day against Philly, for whatever reason, a lot of people were off of Harden that day. He was lower owned than usual, and he went nuts. What did he get, 80 fantasy points, something like that? And that was on FanDuel. I think on DraftKings he had 9. I don't even know what he had, but he went nuts. I don't have to tell you guys that. But I think that he's definitely worth considering. Obviously, you got guys in obvious spots. John Wall's 10-5 on FanDuel. I think he's only 10K on DraftKings. Wall's in a phenomenal spot. I don't think Rose is going to play. He's a game-time decision. I don't think he's going to play. If he plays, I think it lowers Wall a tiny bit. Not much. Wall is certainly still in play. But if Wall doesn't play, if Rose doesn't play and Wall gets a matchup with Jennings, then I think Wall becomes a monstrous play. There's still some concerns. You got to worry about the blowout factor. But the main reason that I like Wall against Jennings, aside from the fact that I don't think Jennings is as good a defender as Rose, not that I'm saying Rose is a great defender, but I don't think Jennings is as good. I don't think he's as strong either. And on top of that, Brandon Jennings played like 53 minutes in his last game. They had one day off, and they literally had a day off. The Knicks canceled their practice yesterday because of the 4 overtime disaster, and I call it a disaster because the refs completely botched the end of that game, and they pretty much determined who was going to win that game. But aside from that, aside from me being a bitter Knicks fan, I do not want. I am not going to be fading John Wall completely. I'm definitely going to be sure to have some exposure. My biggest concern here is the blowout factor. They're big favorites, Washington. They're at home. They're playing a Knicks team who just went to 4 overtime, so I am a little concerned with New York's ability to keep up here. But still, John Wall's in a phenomenal spot. You can't ignore that. I mean, a lot of these guys, I'm not going to go through everybody. Kyle Lowry's in play. Damian Lillard's in play. Even Kemba, who I don't really like playing on the road, he's in play against Damian Lillard. So we got a lot of phenomenal. It goes on. Drew Holiday. D'Angelo Russell is a game-time decision with a calf. If he plays, he's in play. He's 5,700 on FanDuel. I think he's only 55 on DraftKings. So that was that mid to low tier I was telling you about. We have some depth here. We have some options. You can still go with a Brandon Jennings at 5,600 if Rose is out. If Rose is playing, you don't want to go there, obviously, at 56. But if Rose is going to be out, 5,600 for a guy that's pretty much going to play, 36, 38 minutes is a pretty good bargain. However, my concern with the Knicks in general, be careful who you play with the Knicks in general today. Some of those guys played monster minutes, and it wears on you. It really does. It wears on you. So even Melo played over 40, and just keep in mind, just keep that in mind when you're going to roster some of these Knicks. I know it's the early game, and a lot of people like to hop on the earliest game. They like to get ahead and play from ahead. But just be mindful that the New York guys, some of these guys are going to be exhausted, even though they had a day off. Think about it. A guy like Brandon Jennings, based on his normal minutes when Rose is healthy, he basically played 2 games in one night. So think about that for a second. You got Patrick Beverley. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of guys in play. I think somebody who's really interesting is Jameer Nelson. I like Jameer Nelson in general if Moutier is out, which I don't think Moutier is going to play. He's questionable. Keep that in mind, and obviously that could change. But keep it in mind, if Moutier is out, then you got Jameer Nelson at 5,100. Now, Jameer Nelson's price is up at 51. I'm not crazy about the price. But his backup, Jamal Murray, who I do like normally, is also injured. I don't know what the status is on him completely, but I think he's sick. So Jamal Murray is, he was held out of Monday's practice and is considered questionable. So even if he plays, you got to wonder how many minutes he can get. So even though the price isn't so attractive for Nelson today, he may be the only point guard they have. So if that's going to be the case in a pace-up spot against a bad defense, especially a defense that struggles against point guards, I would have to consider a guy like Jameer Nelson. I would have to consider, and not just consider him, but consider playing him in high doses. So it might be ugly. It might sound scary, especially at his price, because you don't feel like you're getting a real deal. But it's something you're going to have to consider. Going back to D'Angelo Russell, Julius Randle has been ruled out. He's got pneumonia. It's pretty serious. If Russell gets to play and Randle is out, that means the Lakers are going to have to rely on D'Angelo Russell and Lou Williams. So I think that automatically makes Russell a play, even if you don't want to play him. Even though he's been playing terrible lately, you would have to consider him. So that's what I mean when I say point guard is deep. It's not that I'm dying to play these guys. It's that the situation around these guys make you have to consider these guys that maybe you wouldn't normally consider on a regular slate. So we're going to move on to the shooting guard position. And as of now, shooting guard is usually where a lot of people like to go for value. As of now, there's really not a lot of value at the shooting guard position in general. If I scroll down to the bottom here, I mean, unless we hear maybe somebody's resting, unless we hear maybe somebody's going to get, for whatever reason, more minutes, it's ugly. I mean, the only real starter that you can take a chance, even Norman Powell, who's 4,200 on FanDuel, I don't know what he is on DraftKings, but even Norman Powell, you can't really play him with DeRozan back. So where are you going to get the value from? I don't think it's going to be shooting guard unless something opens up. You can go with a guy like Nick Young, 3,900. He's been playing pretty much 30 minutes, sometimes under. But the upside you're limited on. And the last time Nick Young played Denver, he did play 31 minutes. He got 22 actual points and about 30.9 fantasy points. That was just on FanDuel. I don't know what he did on DraftKings. So he's probably the only guy that you would look at and think, okay, maybe there's some value there. He's only 3,900 on FanDuel. But outside of that, there's not those Tony Allens or, those guys that you typically resort to when you're looking for value. Gary Harris is 5K. It's not really too much of a savings, and I don't like playing Harris without Jokic. I like their correlation, and I don't know. I mean, you can. I'm not saying not to. I'm not crazy about it. But anyway, if we start at the top, obviously Harden is in a fantastic spot. I'll never tell you to completely fade Harden. I think that today might be a day where I try to limit my exposure to Harden. I do multiple lineups on DraftKings anyway. And I don't know if I want to go too heavy on him just because, one, he's going to be mega chalk, right? He's the guy. But two, Sacramento's playing on the back end of a back-to-back. They went from Philly to Houston last night. Houston obviously is an offensive powerhouse. Sacramento doesn't have Rudy Gay, so they're relying only on Cousins. And Houston has some okay rim protectors. So my concern is not that Harden's going to play well. My concern is they're not going to need Harden to play well. My concern is they might thrash the Kings. So is Harden in play? Of course, he's James Harden. When is he not in play? Even when he duds on you, he's in play. Not to mention, he is coming off of a bad game. Now, a bad game. His 31 fantasy points is a bad game for James Harden. But you know what? When you're paying that kind of price for him, yeah, it is a bad game. And that was considered a good matchup. So on DraftKings, Harden, you kind of have to go with him. He gets the bonus for three-pointers. He gets the bonus for the triple-doubles. He gets the bonus for, double-doubles. And he gets the bonus for, and his turnovers are only negative half a point as opposed to FanDuel where they're negative full point. So I think on FanDuel, If you're going to fade Harden, I think it's better to fade him on FanDuel. I'm not saying to fade him completely. That's not what I'm saying. I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression. You fade Harden, he goes for 100 points, and you're going to be mad at me. I'm just saying that there's so many options you have to consider today, and there's a few studs going today. You have to consider if you're willing to make that sacrifice. And if there's no value that opens up, you're going to have to force this guy in there. And if you have to force him in there and there's no value elsewhere, then even if he gets you that 100 points, who else is going to subside for the rest of that 250 points you might need to take down a GPP, right? Even if Harden puts up 100, if you want to win a top GPP, you still got to score, 350 to 400, something like that. And if you're paying up for Harden and you're forcing value guys with no upside, then how are you going to get the rest of those points? You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying to fade him. I'm just saying take a close look. If value opens up, there's no need to fade him. There's none at all. If value opens up, solid, real value opens up, there's no reason to fade him. But anyway, I think that Eric Gordon is a sneaky play because the Kings in general are bad against shooting guards. So I think that when they pull Beverly and they put Harden at the point, I think that'll open up some opportunities for Gordon. I think he's in a good spot. Bradley Beal's in a great spot. I'm going to talk about him just because the last time he was against the Knicks, it was at the Garden, and he completely tanked. I think he got like 17 points on FanDuel or something like that. But he's 7K on FanDuel, and I'm not sure. I'm going to look him up right now what he is on DraftKings. He is 68 on DraftKings. He's a little bit cheaper on DraftKings. Again, hey, he's in a phenomenal spot, and I'm hoping that people are off of him. I'm hoping people jump off because last time they played him in the spot, he dudded. He did so bad. This time it's a little different. Number one, he's home. Number two, he's going to be matched up with probably Courtney Lee, who's also played 50 minutes plus in that last contest against Atlanta, that 4 overtime game. So I think Beal can certainly take advantage of an exhausted New York defense who was not very good to begin with, who struggles against shooting guards in the first place. So I do like Beal a lot at 7K. Just somebody I'm considering, and obviously on FanDuel you can certainly play a guy like Beal and Harden together if you can find the value elsewhere. And on DraftKings you could make it work, but you're going to have to make a decision. Do you want to play Beal? If you're going to play Harden, do you want to play Beal over another point guard? So you got some decisions to make, but I think Beal's certainly in play. Lou Williams is obviously in play, especially with Randall out. I like Will. I'm going to love Lou Williams if Russell doesn't play. If Russell plays, Lou Williams' usage should still be there with Randall out. However, on FanDuel, he's 6,200, and that's kind of expensive. So on FanDuel, the only way I think I would take him is if D'Angelo Russell was out. Otherwise, I just don't think I want to pay 6,200 on FanDuel there. 55 on DraftKings is a different story. 55, I'll take him regardless. I don't mind playing him on DraftKings regardless if Russell plays or not, because at 55, it's reasonable. It's reasonable, right? Like if you're looking for 5x, that's not too far. However, 5x on 6,200, while it's not terrible, it's obviously more of a stretch, especially if D'Angelo Russell is coming back. So just something to consider there. Oladipo is interesting. He's 6K on FanDuel. I think he's around 57 on DraftKings. I'm not positive. But he's certainly in play. If you don't want to play Westbrook, but you want exposure to that game, Oladipo is a great place to target San Antonio. Just because, one, they're terrible against shooting guards to begin with. It's like their only defensive weakness is shooting guards. And obviously Westbrook is going to soak up most of their attention. So I think Oladipo is interesting also. I'm not going to talk too much more about anybody else. Like I said, it's pretty ugly. There's nobody else to talk about. Once you get past that middle tier on the shooting guard position, it gets ugly after that. So we'll see. Maybe some value open up. I don't know. Maybe some guys will rest. Who knows? Small forward, if you think shooting guard is bad, small forward is fugglier. It is fugly today. You got Kawhi Leonard, 9,600. You got Kawhi Leonard at the top of the charts. He's obviously in play against Oklahoma City. He's going to have Roberson defense. Do you want to go there? That is a pace-up spot. You can try it, but do you want to pay 96 on a small forward position? A position that I think a lot of times you can get away with paying down for. Carmelo is in play against Porter. I'm not crazy. To be honest, I like Porter more at 66 than I like Melo at 85. 85 is just too high for me on FanDuel. I'm not sure exactly what he's priced. I'm curious to see what he's priced at on DraftKings here. Give me 1 second. DraftKings, Carmelo. 75 on DraftKings. So DraftKings, I think he's definitely a lot more feasible. That's $1,000 difference. That's a big difference. So I think on FanDuel, he's way too overpriced. Gallinari is another one that's interesting. With Jokic out, I know that Denver has said they want to run the offense through Gallo, and Gallo's coming off two pretty good games. Or before these two games, he was struggling for consistency. These last two games, he seems to have found a stroke. He got 32 points against Phoenix. It's just paying $7K for him. You know what I mean? A guy that's so scoring dependent. If he doesn't score that 25 to 30 points, he's not getting you that massive upside that I think people are expecting. Now on DraftKings at 6,300, definitely more feasible. Like I said, it just makes sense. He has a better shot of hitting his value. But 7K on FanDuel is scary. Porter, like I said, I think he's in a good spot. New York gives up a lot of points to threes. Porter's been pretty hot from the three-point line lately. He's 6,600. I don't think he's going to kill you. So I do think I would rather take Porter against the Carmelo Anthony, who's coming off a 53-minute game, or 40-something minute game, than take Melo at 8,500 against a good defender. So Wilson Chandler certainly in play. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is in play. Ariza is a good guy to take without Rudy Gay in there. If you want to take Ariza with Harden, there's some good correlation there. So there's some guys. One guy I want to talk about I think is interesting with Randall out. Luol Deng. Now on FanDuel he's 42, which is okay. But on DraftKings, what is he, 3,700 or something like that? He is super cheap. He's dirt cheap on DraftKings. And I think he's going to get a little bit more minutes with Julius Randle out. He's a rebounding presence, and he might get some minutes. Obviously, he's going to get some minutes at the 3. He might get some at the 4. How much he's going to get, I don't know. But we've seen in the past, if he's going to get a starter's run, we've seen that he does have some upside. He's capable of scoring 25, 26. We've seen him go as high as 38 this year as far as fantasy points. So he has that upside. I'm not saying to lock him in necessarily, unless you think he's going to get run. If you think he's going to get a full 37 minutes, on DraftKings at 3,700, you got to lock him in. Now, if you don't think he's going to get that, and I don't know yet, I got to do some research myself. If you don't think he's going to get that run, then obviously it might not be worth it. But just wanted to point him out. He's worth considering. There's other guys you can play at the position, but we're going to move on here. Like I said, it's a pretty gross position. It's nothing. It's not attractive whatsoever. Moving on to power forward. Obviously, everybody's devastated with Jokic being out. We love playing him. How about his price on FanDuel? 11.3. They got him priced higher than Anthony Davis. And I'm not mad about it. Hey, the guy's phenomenal. But in my opinion, Anthony Davis has shown, I'm not saying Jokic doesn't have the upside in him, but in my opinion, Anthony Davis has shown us way more upside than Jokic. So I find it a little weird. Now, the matchup is better for Jokic, so I guess that's why he's priced up. But what does it matter? He's not playing, right? So let's move on from Jokic. Anthony Davis, I had Anthony Davis last time he went out. He did me justice. He won me some money. I was happy with that. He's against Toronto, and he's in a similar situation. I think Toronto's going to have a hard time with him. They're going to struggle with him, and I think Anthony Davis is yet again going to go under own just because people are going to flock to Harden, and I think that there's some cheaper options at power forward people might try to get away with today. So he's in play. LMA against OKC. LMA is 78. I don't think I want to play him at 78, even though Gasol is out. LMA has been getting some big minutes, but if he's going to have, I don't know, if they throw him at the 5, that means he's going to have Adams on him, and I don't think I really want to go against Adams necessarily. On the flip side, I do like Adams, so we'll talk about him later. Markieff Morris definitely in play. His price is starting to creep up there. He's 69 on FanDuel. Good matchup against New York. Don't get me wrong. It's just the problem here is there's so many ways you can attack New York because their defense is so bad. And Markieff, even though he's been playing more consistent, he only broke 40 once, and yet his price is just about at 7K on FanDuel. And so that kind of puts you in my opinion anyway, that puts you in a strange spot. Because obviously you have an opportunity, you want to buy those points if you could, I guess, on a 6-game slate. But you might not have to. There's some guys with other upside who are a little cheaper. Well, at least one guy that I'm thinking of right now. And that guy is Kristaps Porzingis. Porzingis is 65 on FanDuel. And he is 62 on DraftKings. Listen, he's been struggling lately. There's no secret to that. Since coming back from his injury, he's been struggling. But make no mistake about it. Once he gets going, you will not see him this cheap again. So I'm not telling you to hit the lock button on him, but I am definitely telling you, you have got to consider this guy. We know the upside he's capable of. And my favorite thing about Kristaps in this spot is he is the only Knicks starter to play no more than 30 minutes in that overtime game. He fouled out. He fouled out against Atlanta, I think in the fourth quarter or maybe the first overtime. He only played 30 minutes. So Carmelo played over 40. Jennings played over 50. Courtney Lee played over 50. Even Noah, I think, played something ridiculous. Porzingis only played 30. He's going to be your freshest starter. And if the Knicks are going to keep this game close, if you're relying on the Knicks to keep this game close so that you can play a Beal or a Wall, you have to take Porzingis. Because if they keep this close, Porzingis is going to be the guy that keeps them in this game. So I'm not going to waste the opportunity. I'm going to play a lot of Kristaps. I am. And that could burn me. Listen, I'm not always right. I give out some bad takes every once in a while. I give out some good ones, give out some bad ones, right? But this is a guy, in my opinion, at that price that I want to take a shot on. I definitely want to take a shot on that. Kenneth Faried has been playing phenomenal lately. With everybody who kind of went to what's his name? Nurkic. They went to Nurkic last time that Denver played with Jokic out, and he really didn't get any run. They just don't like that guy. I get it. And against the Lakers, I think you can go small. So I wouldn't be surprised if Faried got another run. However, he does have a hamstring injury, so you don't know. And he's coming off a massive monster game where I rostered him a bunch. But that was a shorter slate. This slate has more options. I don't think I want to pay 66 for a guy like Faried. At least not on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he's 54. He's definitely a lot more feasible at 54. I would play him at 54. But just because he got run last time doesn't necessarily mean he's going to get that run again. He played 37 minutes against Phoenix. Do I think he's going to get a run like that again? I do. Am I going to play him? Yeah, I'm going to play him. Am I going to play him on FanDuel? Probably not. Because like I said, I'll just play Porzingis at 65 before I play Faried. Faried should not be more than Porzingis. You know what I'm saying? Faried should not be priced more than Porzingis. So on DraftKings, where he's cheaper, sure. On FanDuel at 66, there's just too many other guys that are cheaper that I'd rather play. Even Aminu at 5,300 is in a decent spot. Ryan Anderson's only 5K. Montrezl Harrell, 45. These aren't guys that are in better spots or anything like that, but they're guys that you have to consider. Not to mention, you got Larry Nance. Larry Nance is 3,800. I do want to talk about him a little bit. He's 3,800. He plays power forward, and Randall is out. I wonder what kind of run he's going to get, because I think that if he gets a full 30 minutes, I think he could certainly pay off his value. His FanDuel, he's 3,800, I think. And on DraftKings, he's 3,300. So this guy is he's priced pretty low. If you think he's going to get run for Randall being out, then you definitely want to lock him up and play him. The problem is there's other Lakers guys that are going to that could impede with those minutes. You got you got Zubac, Mozgov, and Tyreek Black. They all play center, but I wouldn't be surprised to see one of them working in at the power forward position, especially a guy like Tyreek Black. So you got to pay attention there. Tyreek Black, even with minutes, has dudded. We've seen he's not too great, even against Utah. And granted, listen, I'm not going to judge him against Utah because he's had some pretty big games with little minutes. But this matchup is a little nicer for him. I think if Jokic was playing, obviously I would want to do a Black. But with Nurkic and instead, at 3,600, Black is certainly an option. But if they give Larry Nance a run, Larry Nance at the power forward position is a great punt option. So just something to consider. We are going to move on to the center position. Center is, it's interesting as usual, right? I don't know. It's kind of ugly. There's a couple guys that appear to be in really good spots. Let me rephrase. It's very ugly. It's very ugly. You got Boogie Cousins, 11-4 on FanDuel, coming off of a massive game, but he's on the back end of a back-to-back. You guys know how I feel about playing guys, big men, on the back end of a back-to-back. But it's Boogie Cousins. He's 11-2 on DraftKings, 11-4 on FanDuel. He's in a pace-up spot against a team that's not very good at defense. He's going to be playing big men that aren't going to be able to cover him around the three-point line against a team that gives up a lot of three-pointers. Sounds like a good spot. It does. Sounds like a good spot. Do I think you have to go there today? Not necessarily. I am concerned that they are going to get blown out. And I am also concerned about taking Boogie after a night where he just exploded. Literally last night, right? So don't get me wrong. He's been playing phenomenal. And we've seen him in a back-to-back against Charlotte. So he played on the 27th against Indiana, right? 48.7 fantasy points. Against Charlotte the next day, He put up 62.6. So he's capable. If any big man is capable of having a monster game on the back end of a back-to-back, it's Boogie. And we've seen him do it a couple times. So if you want to pivot off, if you can't afford Boogie and Harden both, and you want to pivot off of Harden, maybe go Boogie. Are there concerns? Sure. There's certainly concerns. He's expensive, for one. He's in a back-to-back. He's in a situation where his team very well may get blown out. So I get it. But I don't know. I think Boogie is interesting because I think he is that much better than the other centers. Now, let's go through some of these centers. You got Mason Plumlee at Charlotte. He's in a pretty good spot. On FanDuel, he's $7,400. I'm not paying $7,400 for Mason Plumlee. Not unless I really have to. And on this slate, I don't think you do. You got Marcin Gortat. $6,500 on FanDuel. I would much rather play Gortat than Plumlee. Question is, do you think Gortat, who is in a monster matchup, and Gortat is 58 on DraftKings. DraftKings, Gortat's a great play. He's a great option on DraftKings. On FanDuel at 65, he's a little pricey. But he's in a phenomenal matchup, playing against a team that's probably worn out. So you figure if he gets Noah just played a massive amount of minutes, right? If he gets O'Quinn, not too afraid of O'Quinn, he'll probably get O'Quinn in foul trouble. That's what O'Quinn does. He gets in foul trouble. And if he plays against Hernan Gomez, who I really like, I like Hernan Gomez. However, Hernan Gomez gets kind of bullied by bigger guys. Gortat's a strong dude. So if Hernan Gomez is against Gortat, I think Gortat might bully. If O'Quinn's in there, Gortat's going to get fouled. And if Noah's in there, I think Noah's going to get tired. So I think Gortat's a very, very good play. I think he's in a very good spot. But do I think he can get me close to something that Boogie could do at this position? I don't know. Adams is in a great spot. I know it's against San Antonio, and he'll probably be low owned, which is great. But you have to consider the fact that now listen, against Cleveland he played 27 minutes. That's because they were getting so destroyed. It wasn't even by the time the second half rolled around, they were just getting destroyed. It really wasn't worth playing him when you have Cantor out and you need Adams. But Adams in this spot, I think he's going to get more close to those 30. If this game can stay close, he's going to get around 37 to 40 minutes here. They're going to need him. And Gasol is not playing. So that means he's going to match up with either David Lee or LMA. If it's David Lee, he's going to crush. That's why I think it's going to be LMA. And even LMA, Adams is super aggressive. He's a super aggressive player. I wouldn't be surprised to see Adams take it to him. So we know the upside Adams is capable of. We know he's going to get some run here because Cantor's hurt. So I definitely like Adams at 6K. So that's what I'm saying. You have options at center. It's just, are these options going to justify you, or going to justify you fading hard Boogie? That's the question, and I don't know. Valanciunas, he's pretty cheap. He's in a pretty good spot. Even guys like Capella, who these guys are dirt cheap. If you want to punt the position, Hernan Gomez, the guy I just talked about, he's 4,300, and he didn't play at all. He did play a little bit. He barely played against Washington. He played because he had to, because Noah and O'Quinn both fouled out. That's why Hernan Gomez played against Atlanta. Other than that, he's one of the freshest Knicks out there. So there are options. There's guys like you can even punt with guys like Tyreek Black that we talked about. So there's options. That's the whole point. There's certainly some options today. So you got some things to think about. The slate should be a lot of fun. It should definitely be a lot of fun. But you're gonna have some stuff that you got to consider. I don't think it's gonna be easy differentiating. We need news. You got to wait for the news. Maybe some value will open up, and if value opens up, you can go more stars and Scrubsy. But right now, from what I'm seeing, the stars and Scrubsy approach could be a little tough, and that's because some of the guys that should be priced as scrubs, like Jameer Nelson, these guys are not D'Angelo Russell, but Jameer Nelson, Brandon Jennings, these guys are priced up a little bit. So they're not priced at the right scrubs. You're looking for like minimum salary guys. You're looking for like at least in the 4s. Both of these guys are in the 5. And they're not that good. Like, they're good enough at certain prices that you can play them and pretty much lock and rest assured they're going to hit their salary. But in general, they're not that good. I'm not saying they're bad players. I'm not trying to make fun of them. I'm not trying to make them feel bad. They're not as good, realistically. So you got some stuff you got to consider today. And going back to Plumlee, real quick, I'm not telling you not to play Plumlee, because Plumlee could be in a phenomenal spot with Cody Zeller out. Cody Zeller he's got sore quads, I think, so he might not play. If he don't play, Plumlee's in a phenomenal spot. All I'm saying is on FanDuel, where he's 7,400, I don't think I want to go there. That's all I'm saying. Now on DraftKings, 6,500, that's more up my alley. That's what I'm used to playing for Plumlee. I've played him at that price before, no problem. So I don't want you to get it twisted. But either way, I like Gortat better. I don't think that's too much of a stretch, right? It's probably a pretty logical play. So we got some things you got to pay attention to. You know, we talk about it. One big problem that it took me a while to overcome is sometimes in these slates, sometimes things happen on their own. And what I mean by that is sometimes the slate determines who you're going to play or who you have to play. If there's a big injury and a guy's going to get a super big run, you don't have a choice. You kind of have to play him. Like Noel, right? When Okafor is out, when Embiid is out, and Noel is sitting there, the slate is telling you you have to play this guy. If he's 4,100 and he's going to get 30-plus minutes and there's no real backups for him, then what merit do you have fading a guy like that? So don't be stubborn. Don't play the guys that you want to play because you like to play them. If you want to be a fan, that's fine. You better be going slow because if you're playing seriously and trying to be an NBA fan at the same time, you're just going to cost yourself money in the long run. So listen to the slate. Pay attention. Adapt to the slate. Adapting is everything. As a military brat, I can tell you in this world, adapting is everything. So adapt. Anyway, listen, that's going to do it for us. Let me just say that. It's going to do it for us today, position by position. If you're not a member of WiseTake.com, please visit. Membership is free. You get access to our free raw projections for DraftKings and FanDuel. You get access to our free cheat sheets. You get access to our forums, which I'm trying to get going. If you like what you see, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel and hit that thumbs up button, that like button. If you're listening to us on Podbean or iTunes, if you're on iTunes, subscribe to us, please. Leave us a comment, rate us. If you're on Podbean, give us a follow. We're trying to get something going. I enjoy doing this. I'm hoping that you guys enjoy listening to it or watching it, whatever method you're using. I do appreciate everyone for listening. I say this every time, and I mean it. I appreciate it. I really do. I appreciate you watching, listening, whatever you're doing to support WiseTake. I do appreciate that. But anyway, tomorrow is Wednesday, so we got WiseTake Live coming back tomorrow around 5:30. We'll have a podcast in the morning, so you can listen to that, and then we're going to launch the show at night. If you want to contact me again at Twitter, it's at CK_013, or of course you can reach us on the forum. But that's going to do it for us, and as always, good luck.